What's up, everybody? Welcome back to FFT. I'm Trevor, and today we're talking about league settings. Let's check it out. Okay, so today we're going to be going through everything league setting related. So we're talking about draft settings, score settings, roster settings, league member settings. We're going to go through everything together. We're doing it here on Sleeper. That's the one I'm most familiar with. I know there's lots of other platforms out there that you can check out as you're, looking at fantasy football options. There's lots of great ones. I personally like Sleeper because it's got a great phone app, and also I can also access it from a website as well, like I'm showing you here today. So what we're going to be going through is commissioner settings. So if you're somebody that's looking at starting a league or creating a league or just adjusting league settings, and you want to know kind of the optimal way to do things, we're going to go through everything here today, and I'll kind of run through that. So today we're looking at my Big 12 league. Everyone in here, there's 12 league members, which is why we did that. And then also a lot of us are college football fans, and we really like the Big 12. So I'm wearing my Sikkim hoodie today. A lot of my family went to Baylor, and we're big Baylor fans, so had to rep them a little bit. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Going through some league settings here. So first thing, when you log in to Sleeper, again, they've got a phone app, but if you're on the website, that's what I'm showing you here today. You can look at draft, your team, your league, players, trending players, trades that have gone on, or the ability to trade, and then scores. So when you first log on, you're going to see this draft room here, and you can see that you can actually set up mock drafts. I've got our league is drafting here in about 15 days, and because I've already set up all of my league settings, it allows any team within the league to go in here and do a mock draft. So let's look at what that looks like right now. If I click on mock, new mock draft, when I come in here, it's going to allow me to adjust whatever I want. And then let's see, if I go ahead and click start draft, you see that I'm already the 9th pick. The reason it's set up like that is because I've already put in all of my league settings on the front end. So now anybody who's part of my league can come in here, play around with draft picks, kind of see where they're sitting and what options they may have when it gets around to them, and kind of play around with it and practice before the draft time actually starts. So that's really nice to do. So if you're able to set those settings prior, a long time prior to the draft, if you're able to, so that people can play around with it and kind of see where they stand, try some different strategies within the draft. It makes it a lot easier for them to do. We're going to go back, though. I'm going to go back to my keeper league. You can see in the top left the name of the league. We started in 2023. It's a 12-team keeper half PPR. So the first thing I'll get into is you've got no points per reception, half point per reception, and then full point per reception. I really think that half PPR is the way to go when setting up a league, whether it's keeper, redraft, dynasty, whatever it is. Half PPR is probably the way to go, and the reason I say that is it really kind of bridges the gap between running backs and wide receivers. It makes it so that running backs still have value, but then wide receivers have a lot of value as well, and makes it so that, for running backs catching a pass, they get half a point just by catching that pass, whether they get any yards or not. So that's one thing that I recommend doing. Half PPR seems to be the most popular these days as well. That's kind of what I'd recommend. It's personal preference. You can do whatever you prefer, but that's the way I'd go. So let's go ahead and jump into some settings. You can see here that my league is full. I've got everybody in here from friends and family. We've got, like I said, 12 members. If I scroll down, there's this little cog that you can click on, and that'll bring you to the settings page. So I'm in here. Here's my league settings. The league name, this is where you adjust the league name, the logo, all kind of important things. It's silly, but it's important because this is, everyone wants to have pride in their league. They want it to be fun. You can adjust it to be whatever kind of makes sense. Like I said, a lot of us are Big 12 fans, and so it just made sense to name our league the Big 12 and give us a Big 12 logo. All right, so let's look at teams. We'll start with how many teams should you have in a league? I'll be honest, I've kind of played the spectrum before. I've had as low as 6. I've had as many as 14, I think. I haven't had any more than that. I wouldn't recommend going above 12 or 14, really 12, because once you start getting into those higher team leagues, you're going to start having some issues with the amount of really good players available to your league. So you're going to end up putting players onto your starting roster, most likely, if you're more than 12 teams in a league, that aren't even, starting prospects for their NFL teams. And so that makes it a lot less fun when you're not starting players that are actually relevant in the NFL. And then also, if you get down to like 6 and 8 team leagues, that can also be a little bit of an issue, because waivers kind of become irrelevant. If you only have 6 teams, that you're drafting really the cream of the crop all the way through your draft, and by the time you get to the end, you're going to have bench players, and you're really never going to be even dipping into waivers at all, because the people on your bench are going to be way better than anybody in the waiver. So it kind of eliminates the need for waivers, and waivers are, in my opinion, a lot of the fun of fantasy football, kind of paying attention to who's up and coming, or if players get injured, having to pay attention to who's available, if people are on bye and you're having to kind of sort through potential options, things like that. So I really recommend probably between 8 and 12 teams in the league. The other thing I'll say about this is you need to have even teams. You can't have 11 team members. You can't have 9. You can, but the downside with that, again, is that you're having either every week somebody's having a bye, or you're having to put in a team that auto drafts, and you're just kind of updating rosters, which is no fun either, because then that makes it so that teams either have a free win, or it causes a lot of issues. So just trust me, go with even amount of teams. Just makes your life as a commissioner a lot easier. All right, so let's jump into waiver types. So there's kind of 3 main types of waivers. There's rolling waivers, reverse standings, and fab. I'm going with fab with this 12-team keeper league. It's really one of my favorites. I do it in one of my other leagues as well, and I love it. The reason I love it is because it forces players to play within their budget. I'm giving them $100. It's fake money, but it allows them to pick and choose players off the waiver, and they're bidding against other players. They don't know what other people are bidding. It's a blind bid. So you go into it, you say, hey, I think this player that just popped up on the waivers did great week 1, is continuing to do great week 2. I'm going to put $25 on him. And it kind of forces them to think, all right, what are other people going to put in for this player? Sometimes you way overbid other people. Sometimes you're within. Sometimes you lose by 1 or 2. It makes the waiver aspect of fantasy football a lot more fun if you add like a bidding aspect to it, like fab. Otherwise, if you want to go with like rolling or reverse standings, this makes it so that rolling waivers, it's like if you draft or if you pick up somebody on the waivers, you drop to the bottom of the pile, and then anybody else above you that wants a waiver going forward, they get first dibs. Reverse standings is whoever's doing the worst, they're going to have the opportunity to pick up a player before you do. So I recommend the rolling or the fab bidding. With the waiver budget of 100, just makes life easy, and no minimum bid. It's kind of fun to allow players to pick up somebody for $1 or $2 if somebody's just trying to get them for free. It adds that level of competition. After games, waiver clear. I recommend Wednesday just because of where it falls in the week between your Monday night games and your Thursday games. It allows time for that, so that's what I recommend. That's kind of standard. Time players on the waivers after they get dropped. So if you drop somebody, you don't want them to be able to get picked up by somebody immediately. Because let's say somebody's at the weight room, or somebody's working, and they don't have the ability to pick up somebody right away. You want them to have to sit on the waiver for a certain amount of time before somebody else can actually pick them up. So I would recommend about 2 days. I think that's kind of pretty standard too. Time to review pending trades. So if somebody sends you an offer, the standard, what the default was 2 days. I don't like having it set to none. I don't like allowing it to just sit forever. I like forcing people to kind of make a decision at some point within 3 days. So I give them 3 days. So it's kind of a longer threshold than just 1 or 2 days, but it still forces those people to either negotiate or interact within that period. So the person who sends the trade isn't waiting for forever, and the person who's receiving the trade, it kind of keeps them, focused. Trade deadline. I have it set to the 11th. The reason for that is you're getting into playoffs pretty soon after that. So you kind of want trades to happen prior to that. And if you don't make things happen before playoffs, bummer. So sad. So, okay, so playoffs start. Which week should you have playoffs start? I recommend the week of the 15th week of football. The reason for that is week 14, you still have players on bye, I believe. So you don't want to have your playoffs start when potentially, some of your best running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks are on bye. That really gives them, it really hurts them when they go into the playoffs. So I'd recommend 15. I wouldn't recommend this starting in week 16 either, because once you start getting into the later weeks, you start to have some of your best players not playing in those games anymore, because as an NFL team, they've either already made it into the playoffs on their end, or they haven't made it into the playoffs, and so they don't want their best players to get injured, and so there's kind of that sweet spot between week 14 and week 16. Week 15 is pretty standard. I recommend going with week 15. All right, playoff teams. How many playoff teams do you want to make it into playoffs? With a 12-team league, I say about 6. I think that's pretty standard too. I recommend 6 because it's half of your league. You really want people to be focused on making it to playoffs. The rest of the 6, or the 6 that don't make it, they're playing to not get last place. And so with the way that my league is going to do it, whoever we put money on this league, and whoever makes it into the playoffs has a chance at winning money. Whoever doesn't make it into the playoffs is playing to not have a consequence. And I don't know if we've landed on a consequence yet, but they're playing to not get last place, and last place is generally the one that has to do whatever the consequence is. And I think that's fun too, because it forces players to still pay attention to fantasy football, even if they don't make it into that playoffs. If you do anything other than 6 teams, like if you do 4 teams, it feels really crappy to be one of the other 8 teams, and you did really well in the normal season, you still don't make it to playoffs. That feels really crappy. If you make it too many teams, then that bottom group it feels really bad too. So again, I think having that 6-team playoff group that make it is pretty good. Playoffs weeks per round. I have it 1 week per round, just because of the amount of teams that are making playoffs, and also the week that we're starting at. If I did a 2-week championship round, or 2 weeks per round, it would make it so that you're compiling the scores from 2 weeks together, which is honestly optimal if you have less teams in your league. So like if you have 6 or 8, that might be the way to go, because then it makes it so that if you have a really bad week, you still have the opportunity the following week to average out your score and make it a little bit better if your players show up that next week. So that I really only recommend doing one of these last 2 options if you have less teams in your league. Playoff seeding rules. I do default, so teams stay on their initial side of the bracket throughout the playoffs. You can do reseed, which means that the higher seed teams always play the lower seed teams in every round, so it'll adjust the brackets as you go. I say stick with default. It's like how March Madness would look, or how normal playoffs would look. So I like default. And then toilet bowl. So the playoff lower bracket type, you have either a toilet bowl or a consolation bracket. So they're either playing to not be last place, or they're playing to be the first place of the lower bracket. I think toilet bowl is more fun, like I said, because there's a consequence for last place, and you really don't want to be last place. So you're playing to not be in the last game with this one, which is great. Injured reserve slots. I do 2, just because I want people to have to jump into waivers at some point if their entire team's getting hurt. I don't want them to be able to just stockpile injured players, because then it just makes it so nothing's changing about your team. You're never having to touch waivers that way. So I recommend about 2. You can do more or less. It's not a huge deal when it comes to the settings. Allow players with COVID on IR. That was big during COVID season, not so much anymore. Allow out players on IR. So if they're out, should they be able to be on IR? I probably will toggle that on. I need to think about that a little bit more. Allow suspended players on IR. So like if they have issues with the league or something like that. Allow not available players on IR. Allow DNR, holdout, opt-out players on IR, and allow doubtful players on IR. This one's kind of funny because I hate when somebody shows up as a doubtful player on my roster. You know they're not going to play, but you still can't put them on IR. I may end up toggling this on just to make everyone a little bit happier in my league. League type, like I said, this is a keeper league. So this is where you'd go if you want to change it between a redraft, keeper, dynasty. If you want to know more about these leagues, I made YouTube videos on each one of these. Also, I made a video on best ball leagues. I recommend checking those out if you're interested in kind of figuring out which one might be for you. I'll link those videos in the description below. But there's 3 different types of league that Sleeper allows you to pick from. This league that I'm running through right now is a keeper league, which means that you can keep 1 or more players from year to year that you've drafted. Dynasty, obviously, is you're keeping all of your players from year to year and you're just drafting new rookies. And then redraft, like it says, is the most popular. I think that's kind of the most popular for new players, which might be why it's still the most popular, is you're just redrafting a team every single year. So if you're new and you made some bad choices or you had a bad strategy your first year, you can always adjust and there's no real consequences. Whereas with keeper, if you don't pick somebody good and there's no one really on your roster that you want to keep, it can kind of be detrimental for you. In my keeper league, I have 3 keepers set. I think it's a pretty good number. I'd recommend about 3 or 4 if you're doing this. Any less, and it doesn't really feel like a true keeper league anymore, and you're turning into a dynasty league. So I recommend 3 or 4, which really allows players who make great picks, especially in later rounds, maybe take some risks on some players. It allows them to benefit from that going into the following year. Keeper deadline prior to draft, I have none, just because as long as they show up and they have their keepers before we draft, I can put them in right before we begin. Because this is the beginning of our league, they're not going to have any keepers right now, so I'm not worried about that for now. Allow draft pick trading. I love this one. So I would toggle this on if you're doing a keeper league, especially because it allows people to benefit from really great draft picks and keepers. So it allows them to switch to trade draft picks, and also I'm going to allow them to trade keeper options for other draft picks or other keeper options. So that's something kind of fun that our league's doing. You don't have to do it, but you can. Team settings, this is where you kind of change your profile picture and your team name. Roster settings, so let's jump into this for a little bit. I think typical is 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 flex. And then what we're doing is called a super flex. We're doing 1 super flex, which allows you to have an additional quarterback on your team or another wide receiver, running back, or tight end. Generally, it ends up being quarterbacks because quarterbacks are one of the highest scoring positions in fantasy football. So that's why it's called super flex. Otherwise, it's just called normal flex, where you can have a wide receiver, running back, or tight end. I really like super flex because there's a lot of quarterbacks in the league. There's 32 teams, right? So if you only have 12 teams in your league, even if you're having every team have 2 quarterbacks, you're still only using up 24 quarterbacks out of the 32. And so it forces players to change strategy a little bit, and it kind of makes it more fun in regards to waivers and trading and those sorts of things. I'm really excited to test it out with this league. The other things you can do in my family league, we have a kicker and we also have a defense. So like with a kicker, you're just picking a kicker. You're generally picking kickers that have a lot of opportunity. It's not necessarily just the teams that score the most, because that's just PATs. Whereas sometimes, honestly, I can't remember who I had last year, but I picked a kicker who was on a pretty bad team, but it ended up working out for me because they only ever kicked field goals, and he just got 3 points, 3 points, 3 points. And he ended up being one of my highest scoring players a few of my weeks just because he kicked so many field goals. Defense, it can also be kind of fun. Defense is kind of more, it fluctuates kind of based off who is playing who, right? So even though it's a great defense, if they're playing a great offense, maybe you want to trade them out for somebody else that week. That can also make waivers a little bit more fun. I'm not doing it with this league, but it can be fun. You can also do defensive linemen, linebackers, other options in here as well. But this is pretty standard. Like I said, I'm doing 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 normal flex, and then 1 super flex. I like that, and we'll run with that for this year. Score settings. So this is how people make points in your league. So what I did is all pretty much default. You can do things in here like increasing the amount of points for a passing touchdown, adding points for a first down, a pick 6 thrown, So like you can do negative points in here, like you see for interceptions. You can also do bonuses. So like if someone gets a completion that's 40 plus yards, do they get additional points? I'm not touching any of that right now. The only thing I am doing in this league is I did change for receiving. We're doing a tight end, what's it called? Super tight end bonus or tight end premium. So this means that, like I said, we're in a half PPR. So you get a half a point per reception already in this league. With this as a tight end, you get an additional half point. So this can be beneficial for the tight ends. Like if you don't have Travis Kelce, for example, you can still have a great tight end because now they get an additional half point per reception. They don't have to get a bunch of yards just by catching the ball. Tight ends will now get 1 full point because of this additional half point I'm adding. Kicking, team defense, it doesn't matter for my league because no one's drafting a kicker or a defense. Draft settings. So I put in my draft date, my draft time. You can change that once you save it. It tells your league what time you're drafting and how to prepare. Auto start draft. I don't have that turned on just because I'm going to start it when all of us are ready. We're actually all getting together here at my house. We're going to do like a pizza party. I recommend doing that if you can. Do it in person. If you can't do it in person, get a Discord channel. Do something where you can all be together, trash talking, having fun, drinking, having a good time. So if you can do that, again, I'm not doing the auto start because I'm just going to wait till we're done eating pizza and we're all kind of ready to go. You can do that though if you want. Draft type. So there's different types of drafts. Snake is the default and the most popular. That's what I recommend doing, especially for keeper leagues. Linear non-snaking would be like what you would do if you're like in a dynasty league and you're drafting rookies after your original draft, so the following year. So that it's kind of like how the NFL would do it, where it doesn't loop back around. With a snake, you go 1 to 10 or 1 to 12, and then the 12th pick would get 2 picks in a row, and then it comes back the other direction. Linear is go 1 to 12, and then 1 to 12, and then 1 to 12. Auction, salary cap can be fun. I've actually never done it, but it's where you're bidding on players, and you have a certain amount of money that you can spend on players. Time per pick. Right now it's set to 2 minutes. The reason I have it set at 2 minutes is because we have some new players, and I kind of want to keep it chugging. We have some guys in our league that are on East Coast or like Central time zone, and so they're already going to be drafting a little bit later in the night. I don't want them to be staying up forever to draft. If you're in a league that has more experienced players, you could do no time per pick, so just allow them infinite amount of time to pick. It makes it so that, if you're ready, you can pick, but if you need more time based off of a situation that occurred in the draft, you can also kind of respond to that and think about how you want to change up your strategy if need be. But I only recommend that for kind of more experienced players. What was the other thing I was going to say? I think that's it. Oh, with like Dynasty, I do know that some leagues will also do it where there's no time in between each pick, or maybe they do it 24 hours per pick. So you can, those are the sort of drafts you wouldn't do in person, obviously, but you can make it so that your draft spans, months leading up to the season, especially if it's like a dynasty league and you're drafting rookies. You can really spend some time doing research and kind of making those picks as time goes on. Okay, CPU auto pick. When users run out of time, I have it set. So like if someone's not around, as a commissioner, you can always pause the draft, change it, and fix the pick if you need to. Draft order. So this is the draft order. I did it randomized by, if you go online, there's a thing called Duck Race. It's a lot of fun. I recommend doing it. I made a little video of it with my wife as we were doing the draft order. You just get the names of everyone in your league. You go onto that website, you put in their names, and you set it for like 10 seconds. And then every time the race finishes, you remove the first place person. And so the way that we do it is you put in the 12 people, you say start for 10 seconds. It's a 10-second ducky race, and they go through, and whoever gets first place gets the first pick. And then you do the race again, and whoever gets first place in that race gets a second pick, and so on. So this person won the first race, this person won the second race, and so on. I think I ended up with the 9th overall pick. My ducky wasn't too fast, unfortunately, but I'm actually okay with this draft spot. Means I probably won't end up with one of those premium quarterbacks. Hey, but that's fine. Maybe I end up with like Justin Jefferson or something. Who knows? We'll see. Let's see. What else we got? Set keepers. So if you're doing a keeper league or a dynasty league, this is where you go to set the players from year to year and kind of adjust. If people are trading picks or trading keeper options, you can adjust that here. Available players to draft for this draft. Right now it's all. If it was a dynasty league, you would set it to like rookies only, that sort of thing. Third round reversal or alphabetical sort. These are just kind of some additional settings you can have. And reset draft. This would be if your draft goes haywire for whatever reason, it auto started without you guys and you forgot that it started, you can reset it and kind of go back through the entire thing. Makes it nice for you guys. Division settings. We are not doing divisions in our league. I've done a decent amount of research on divisions. I actually suggested it, looking into it with one of my other leagues. We decided against it only because, let's say you have 2 of the best teams in the same division. It's kind of a bummer for them because now you're going to end up with like 2 of the weaker teams still making it to the playoffs based off the division that they're in. I don't recommend doing that. It can be fun. It creates some rivalries. That's maybe a reason why you'd consider doing it. But outside of that, I generally wouldn't recommend doing divisions. Member settings, this is how you adjust who is even participating in your league, and you can unassign or remove them or add new people. Co-owner settings, if you want to add somebody to help you manage the league as a commissioner, I'm fine doing it myself. I have experience in it, and I actually enjoy doing a lot of this. I created a document that goes through the rules for my league that they can reference at any point. I recommend doing that. And then there's commissioner controls where you can always, as a commissioner, change lineups or points or scores or records or anything you want within here. Makes it very nice. And then previous leagues or delete leagues. We don't have any of that. So the last things I'll say is, as a commissioner, it's your job to keep people organized. It's your job to be available if people have questions. You really need to be somebody that's active in your league. If you're not going to be active, you don't like fantasy football, you don't have a ton of experience in it, I'd recommend maybe pawning that off on somebody else who maybe knows more about fantasy football, has played in some leagues in the past, so that they can be responsive to people as they have questions. They can make some critical decisions. All of those sorts of things are pretty important. You're the one running the show. So you want to bring in people to your league that are going to be active and good participants and kind of fun and enjoy the competitiveness and trash talk and all that sort of thing. Makes the league fun. So it's up to you as well to make sure that you're building a good league as a commissioner. It's your job to do that. But it's a lot of fun. Honestly, I'm the commissioner for my family league, and now this league. I'm participating. I think I'm going to be participating in what? So I have 4 leagues here. I'm joining one more dynasty league before the year starts. Really excited about it. Hopefully this video has helped you guys out and you can understand a little bit more about what it takes to be a commissioner and how you can set some of these league settings for your season as you get started. But I think that's it for now. Appreciate you guys checking it out. Please like this video and subscribe. Let me know if you disagree with anything that I said about settings, if you think that maybe I said something wrong about the amount of teams or how you do scoring. I'd love to know. So leave a comment. I'll check it out. I'll respond to you guys. But until next time, we'll see you later. See you guys.